I've complained about emissions lots. No, I haven't complained about emissions. I've complained about emissions regulations.
Ah, yes. Okay. I'm on board.
I do complain about some emissions, the smelly ones, by my dog and other people in this household who shall remain unnamed. But
whoa, don't talk about Ethan like that. Come on, play nice.
But there's a new bill being proposed in California, and it's actually nicknamed Leno's Law because Jay Leno fully endorses it. This would be groundbreaking if it actually passes. This is courtesy of Haggerty.com. New bill would exempt California classics from smog checks. So a Republican from Bakersfield has proposed this law, and it would amend the state's very stringent smog rules, which are probably the most strict of like almost anywhere in the world other than maybe like London.
It's kind of, I kind of forgot about it until all the auction websites started putting up it's your responsibility to see if this can be registered in California. It's like, it doesn't, we don't do that.
It's crazy. If passed into law, California Senate Bill 712 would, quote, fully exempt any vehicle that was made at least 35 years ago if it were insured as a collector vehicle. Now, I got editorial comments already. I feel like if you own a car more than 35 years old, you don't need to insure it as a collector vehicle. Like, odds are you're not going to put that many miles on it. If you are, it's going to be a Toyota, which is going to be fully emissions compliant and not pollutive anyway.
Well, and I think so. The original rules were for the smog that LA was. I think LA made, but California in general was experiencing, which is obviously terrible. When everybody's driving cars that inefficient, and to your point that you just said, they're not going to drive them very much. But also from a like carbon footprint perspective, it's gone. It's like it is better to drive something like that than it is a new car. From like an environmental perspective, maybe not from smog necessarily,
it's paid for itself.
It's paid for itself. You're not adding, other than the fuel you put into it, any additional impacts, I guess. So I have never understood this hatred for old cars from this perspective. Like, they might be less safe. They might, whatever.
But that only affects a person driving it. That's a personal choice.
Yes, correct. So like, this feels so common sense to me that I'm going to be, but I'm also not going to be surprised if it doesn't pass.
It will 100% not pass. I'm saying right now, this will not pass. But it makes so much sense. Leno is quoted as saying that California smog check laws for classic cars need to be updated. They vary too much from state to state, and California's rules don't match up with neighboring ones. Now, I don't think that's why they need to be updated. They're just insane. Like, if you have a 1976 Porsche, because I think it's 75 and earlier is the ones that are exempt from smog, because they're really like, there was no smog equipment on cars that old for the most part. But you have a 1976 Porsche, it has to pass their incredibly stringent tests. And I'm like, I'm not even sure they would have passed in 1976.
Yeah, seriously.
But each of California's neighboring states, this article says, Oregon, Nevada, and Arizona has a different set of standards when it comes to smog and classics. And some of those are also quite stringent. Portland, Oregon exempts vehicles with a model year of 1975 or older, which is like, no kidding. Medford exempts those 21 years or older. But yet the federal EPA exempts any car 21 years or older.
I think that makes, I think you should reasonably be able to expect that a car in that time frame can still align with relatively modern emission standards.
Absolutely. And like, again, you've already paid for your carbon footprint or whatever with cars that old. So yeah. But if that isn't enough, like, at least do like Ohio has, where they have collector plates and historical plates, which say, well, your car is not a daily driver, so it doesn't matter what year it is. If it's special and you're only putting a certain number of miles a year on it, we don't require you to get emissions tests, because they recognize, well, by the math, that it's an absolute drop in the bucket of the total overall emissions footprint of all the cars. Right? Like, we need to worry about daily drivers if we believe, assuming that we believe that cars are a significant contributor to overall global emissions compared to like China's manufacturing and, ships and diesel trains and all sorts of stuff like that. And if we believe that humans can even like fix that, global warming and all that by like putting catalytic converters on their cars, that's a different discussion. But let's just assume that we're all on the same page about the fact that Ferraris are, melting the ice caps.
I think that's what bothers me about a lot of things focused on enthusiast cars is it's never we as car enthusiasts and the cars that we own are such a small percentage of the overall miles, tailpipe emissions, whatever you want to call it, that happens in a year compared to literally anything else. So like, leave us alone, please. Let us like enjoy stuff.
Yeah.
Like, because we're not.
Let us take the catalytic converters off of our car. My 1998 Corvette, right? It's now emissions exempt in Ohio. But yet the law still states that I can't modify the emissions equipment, right? Like if you go by the letter of the law. But I'm like, we did our mileage calculation on all our cars on a different episode. I think I put like 500 miles on the car last year, which is I could be pouring oil out of the engine and not hurting the environment based on that little mileage.
Yeah. Like that's what, 2 tanks of gas? If that, like, how many barrels does the U.S. go through in a day?
Right.
Like, it's just wild. And let us just have fun. That's all I want.
Yeah. Yeah. But another quote by Jay, and this is good. He said, California's rich classic car culture, sparked by the post-war hot rod boom and boosted by Hollywood's love for chrome and horsepower, has made it a paradise for enthusiasts. And that's so true. Like California has an incredible car culture. And back to what you said about the auctions, having this disclosure about you need to make sure you can register it in California. It is really crazy what can and can't be pragmatically registered in California. Any European or JDM import and a lot of Canadian imports cannot be registered there. And it doesn't matter. They could pass smog, but they just have these rules that make it nearly impossible to register anything modified, anything imported. It doesn't matter if your modifications made the car more friendly to the environment. It's just not factory correct. So it's a big, big part of the collector car market. There's a lot of money out there. There's a very rich car culture, but California is making it nearly impossible to, I guess, enjoy cars. And a lot of people are registering their cars in Montana and driving them in California, not because they want to get around the 9 to 10% sales tax. I mean, maybe that's a side benefit, but because they just like, well, I can't have it at all unless I register it in Montana, which again goes back to people label me as a libertarian or whatever. But the pragmatic side of me, the logical side says, if laws are too restrictive, people will find a way around them. If they're less restrictive, then people will just obey them. So like you talk about taxes, right? If taxes are reasonable, if it's easier to pay them than to circumvent them, then people will pay them. Same thing with emissions laws. If they're reasonable, people will register their cars in California. And California will probably make a whole ton of money up on all the sales tax they're missing out on by people in their Montana LLCs.
Well, and obviously we can't assume that 100% of those people are suddenly going to start paying sales tax. Like that's not, but even if 50% of them do, because it's easier.
A lot of them will, because it's easier.
So much money that the state can use for literally what, like,
yes, more transactions will happen.
Yes.
But instead people are going, well, I'm going to have my car here anyway, I'm just going to register it, quote unquote, theoretically illegally in Montana.
Yeah.
So like the cars are still there. They're still polluting. California just doesn't know about them. So
they don't get any of the benefits.
Yeah.
What is interesting is I found they tried to do this before. There was a law passed in, I believe, 1998 that said by 2004, it would be a rolling 30-year window. And in 2004, they signed another bill into law, removing that and enshrining the pre-1998 76 or whatever rule that we have today. And I tried to find, it's oddly very difficult to find stuff from 15 years ago, or at this point, 20 years ago on the internet, archives of discussions and why. And I found some Pelican Parts forums, but people are just yelling about it. There was no like reasons why this happened, but like they tried. It was in the law to start happening, and someone, enough people lobbied, or some group was interested enough in kiboshing this whole thing that it was then removed from the law.
Well, let's hope that what we believe about government is true, that they care more about money than the causes that they claim to care about. And so this law will actually pass because they recognize the increased revenue that the state will get, because it is not going to change the amount of ice at the North Pole.
If anybody wants to look it up, it's Assembly Bill 2683 from 2004. I couldn't find much, so good luck.
There you go. I mean, Ohio did away with the front license plates after like 4 or 5 different attempts. Goodness. So there is hope. There is hope for the world. Props and Flops brought to you by Switchcars.
And Switchcars is the enthusiast dealership where we buy, sell, and consign only cars that we like ourselves. Check out our handpicked inventory at switchcars.com and mention SwitchCast for special pricing. Find more information online at switchcars.com or come visit our showroom in beautiful, because it was beautiful today, Twinsburg, Ohio. Doug, what is the pick of the week from SwitchCars inventory?
We took like 7 deposits on cars in the last 48 hours, so I don't even know what we still have for sale. So
good business.
I don't know what will be sold for sale when we air this podcast. So just go to our website and see what's there.
Somebody put a deposit on a pace car, please.
Our flop of the week this week. I'm trying not to hate on this too much because I feel like a Porsche curmudgeon, but I'm a little bit of one. On Instagram, Porsche of Monterey posted a 997 GT3 that was covered in tree sap and associated garbage from the outdoors, and it was roped off inside their showroom because barn finds are the new craze. But they're restoring it for the Porsche Restoration Challenge, which, if you don't know, is Porsche dealers buy a car, typically not an old car, but a newer car. But by newer, I mean like 30 or less years old. And they put it through their service department and put it all back to original, and or sometimes they do like OEM plus modifications, and they have this challenge and they get judged and there's awards and stuff, and it's a big publicity thing. So that's what they're restoring for the Restoration Challenge.
Can this be considered a restoration?
Well, it's
can't they just like squirt it off
because
and change the oil?
Right. That's what I said. That's it. You ruined it. But yes, that was the prevailing opinion. They said in their post, this year's masterpiece is a dealership favorite, a virtually abandoned 2007 911 GT3. It was parked under a local Monterey pine where it's collected every ounce of sap and pine needle the tree had to offer. The Porsche Monterey service team has their work cut out. I'm like, just change the fluids and detail it, man. It's a Metzger GT3. Like,
it'll be fine.
You probably drove it in.
Ugh.
You don't have your work cut out.
I just feel like this, like everything, it just got it got a little ruined for the clout. I used to love these challenges because Porsche North Olmsted, a local Porsche dealer, did a 996 a couple of years ago that actually was like kind of problematic, and they fixed it up and it was gorgeous, and they had some OEM plus bits. Like, it was really cool. This just feels like they want to say that they're participating with the GT3.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think it's kind of a sappy story, if you ask me.
Oh,
the car was also covered in needles, unlike the mint green homeless GT3 that we've talked about, which was filled with needles.
I'm out. Yikes.
Our prop of the week this week is an auction from Bring a Trailer from one of our competitors, but a worthy competitor. 911R Bring a Trailer handle Avant-Garde out in Oregon. 97 Dodge Viper GTS, which of course, well, not of course, but it is blue with white stripes. And, you know, the internet always says, and we've said, and it is always true, that mods do not increase value. However, this car broke that rule. It has a set of gold Forge Star wheels, BC Racing coilovers, updated headlights. It has the side pipe conversion that the Viper RT10s had instead of the pipes going out the rear. And the stance is absolutely amazing. It got rid of that like friggin' 2-fist wheel gap that the stock Vipers had. And this thing looks awesome. And it sold for 77 grand, which is about 20 grand more than a comparable stock GTS sold for like last week. So
holy moly.
People saw the presentation on this, the way the mods that were done. I was tempted to bid on it. It was awesome. Really, really well done by both the seller and the owner who performed all these modifications. Thank you for joining us for SwitchCast with Doug Tabbutt and Tyler Sanders, produced by Ethan Huffnagel. SwitchCast is an automotive entertainment and opinion show, and nothing we say should be taken very seriously. We do not give tax, investment, legal, emotional, or professional advice, and the only licenses we hold are driver's licenses. The opinions expressed on this show are exclusively held by the people pontificating at that moment and do not reflect the values of our producers or sponsors. Our theme music is provided by Emily and Ivory. You can stream their full album on Spotify or SoundCloud. If you like this show, you can stream it in its entirety on your favorite audio podcast platform. Check out switchcast.live for more info.